Welcome to Eudaemonia, the podcast that is all about flourishing. Plug in, relax, and get ready for the goodness as we explore the traits and practices that can help you thrive in life. With your host, Kim Forrester.
Adrian Hayes is a British record-breaking adventurer, author, speaker, leadership and team consultant and coach, documentary presenter, and sustainability campaigner. A former British Army Gurkha officer who also served for 2 years in the Special Forces, Adrian has conquered Everest, K2, the North and South Poles, the length of Greenland by kite ski, and the Arabian Desert by camel, amongst a lifetime of adventure. He has set 2 Guinness World Records and has authored 3 books, including the newly released One Man's Climb, A Journey of Trauma, Tragedy and Triumph on K2. It's an honour to be chatting with Adrian today to talk about the importance of perseverance and to learn how we can become more tenacious when faced with overwhelming challenges and audacious goals. Adrian Hayes, it's an absolute delight to have you here with us in the beautiful British Club here in Singapore. How are you this evening?
I'm not too bad considering the jet lag, Kim. It's, we get over it. But anyway, I'm quite lucky because I sleep badly anyway. So if I don't get a night's sleep, I'm actually okay with it.
So you will persevere through the evening then?
Yeah.
First of all, it seems to be that perseverance is a compound trait. So I was thinking about perseverance and it occurred to me that it's probably made up of things like faith, courage, perhaps pure stubbornness. If you were to break down perseverance into its smaller parts, what would it look like to you?
So I'm putting the question thinking about the times, and I'm going to put it to my expedition work now because I've got many different hats as an expeditioner, as a speaker, as a leadership personal coach, as an author, and various other things as well. But if I look at, in fact, not even just the expedition side of things, I've had a few projects or tasks where I've had to pursue one recently, not too much recently in personal life, which took 5 years. Now, you've got to have, I think, first of all, the clear goal. And I'm very big on goal setting. I dissect goal setting down to its component parts, strip it bare, and get the rubbish out. You've got to be very, very clear why you are doing a goal. And ask myself, what exactly am I trying to achieve here? That's the goal. And then the second question, for the sake of what? And then strip down that for the sake of what? For the sake of what? Really strip down the persona, the bravado, the what you want to appear to the world, and get to the real nut and bolts of why you're doing something. If you've got a clear goal and you're committed to it and you're quite honest about the reasons you're doing it, the perseverance comes naturally with it. You will see that goal through to the end. So that's the first component part. I think the second one is putting up with the setbacks. Every goal, if you've got a goal that's too far, too lofty, it sometimes lets people put it off. Like losing weight, I'm going to lose 20 kilograms of weight. Well, that's too big a goal to go for. And it's hard to persevere when you're not getting there. So you've got to break them down into the interim goals, the smaller goals, step by step. And that allows you to get up the setbacks. And the third component part, I would say, is identifying pain. Pain and these, and there's a lovely quote. It was written by an athlete once: pain is temporary. It may last a minute, an hour, a year, 5 years, but quitting lasts forever. That's it. Yeah. So pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. So that's how I would break down perseverance into 3 parts that mean most to me.
However, immediately you start talking and I'm thinking, yes, we can have lofty goals and we can be very clear about those goals, but if they're not authentic to us, if they're goals that we've adopted from our parents or from society, then do you feel that we'll be able to persevere to the same degree? Do you feel that authenticity is kind of imbued somewhere in authentic perseverance?
Yeah, and if you're talking about goal setting, and I'm sometimes asked I do a presentation and someone's really inspired by, the videos, the music and all these things. And I've said this story a few times. Someone asked me, Mr. Adrian, I want to climb Mount Everest. And I'll say to them, well, that's great, great that you do. But, firstly, I'll ask that question. Why exactly do you want to achieve it? For the sake of what? For the sake of what? Strip it down. And then I'll ask him, so can I just tell you how much physical fitness do you do right now? And the guy say, nothing at all. I smoke 40 cigarettes a day. I drink probably 5 pints of beer, a day, some of this. And that comes to the authenticity. If you set a goals that's in line with the values of who you are, you'll probably achieve it. If they're out of line with those values, the stark truth is you'll probably fail. And where I get this thing is my favorite topic, the conversation these days, is this social media epidemic for attention seeking, recognition, respect, and fame. If you are doing some of these things for that fame, respect, you perhaps won't have that perseverance that's needed. It has to be authentic. I fully agree with you. Got to be in line with who you are.
And so let's take it one step further. An authentic goal, you need to know what is it for. I love that. Is it better if we are being pushed by a sense of failure or pulled by a sense of accomplishment? Or am I getting that completely wrong? Is it actually about being inspired in the moment?
I wouldn't say inspired in the moment, because again, if you just get a quick-witted thing, I want to do this goal. Again, is that really authentic? If that example of someone who asked me about this, health and fitness, for instance, and I'm only just concentrating on these things right now, but it's an integral part of my values. It always has been. Now, you can ask why that was. I can be authentic about it. As a teenager, as a child, I struggled with huge low self-esteem, embarrassment, low confidence levels. I was a middle child, unloved, unseen, unheard. But I found I was actually I loved the fitness side, and I found I was really good at it. And that got me, Special Forces, Selection Army, and all these mountaineering things since I was 16 years of age. So it was authentic. Health and fitness, for whatever reason became a part of my values, and I will always be part of that. So again, that is going back to the authenticity. If I set a goal that is in line with my values, I'm just repeating myself, but it's an authentic reason. So I don't think it's not a spur of the moment thing that I suddenly want to do. And look, we've all read pictures. Some people get shamed. They're perhaps the weight side. They're overweight, and one day they decide, click, that's it. They're going to lose all this weight. So it does happen, but I think in the majority of cases, it's got to be something that's inbuilt within yourselves.
Do you fear failure as you are entering into a journey or an adventure or project?
I don't fear failure, but it hasn't come easily to me. And that, again, that's a setback. You have failures on the way. And some of these failures, and I'm not just talking about expeditions, some of these setbacks, let's call them setbacks, along certain challenges I faced, do send you into a pretty low place. And I think it's when you're in these low places, you've got to sort of slightly detach from the particles, the bits and pieces, and slightly have this higher elevated vision. Sometimes the quote, everything happens for a reason, is often used. And I do go with that quote as well. There's usually a reason for something. But there's another quote I like, which is, things happen. It's up to us to find the reason. And that's a more proactive response, because the everything happens for a reason. We just sit back and just let and everything's wash over us. But things happen, right? The SHITs hit the fan.
Yeah.
Right, we're in this place. What is the reason? And it sometimes might take a few hours, it might take a few days, it might take weeks, months, it might take 5 years to find out, that was the reason for that. And that's what I try to, and it's hard, we're humans at the end of the day, but on these setbacks, I try and sort of think of that. There's a reason behind this, even if it's hard at the time.
You have persevered through some incredible adventures. You've conquered mountains and deserts and Greenland and both poles. And many of my listeners would probably say, well, but that's Adrian Hayes. He's obviously just good at this kind of stuff. Were you good at persevering as a child? I've got 2 teenagers. They're not necessarily great at stickability. Were you perseverant as a child, or is it something that you've actually grown into?
I would say that when I set my mind to a goal, I can be very determined about it. In fact, I would say some of these expeditions, so determined, so driven to see it through, that the blinkers come on. And that can appear to be selfish, can appear to be not self-centered, because it's not that, but it's self-preservation. You've got to put the work in. You've got to put that mindset to go through it. So I think it's been with me for quite a long time, and I'm going back to teenage years and training on this and various things and other projects. But if there's a goal, if it's a challenge that perhaps I'm not interested in, then I'll sort of fade away. I'll be like sort of everyone else. But it comes back to this: if you're authentic, you said it, authentic with a goal, you know the reasons you're doing it, you're committed to it, you're prepared to put up the pain, prepared to put up the sacrifices, you break it down into some goals, and it's part of who you are, then yes, everything's possible.
That's what I wonder. I wonder if it's perhaps not that you were particularly willful or obstinate, but rather that you chose goals that you were aligned with. And I put to you that maybe everybody on the planet has a goal that they would absolutely push through until they accomplished. And perhaps it's not so much having the will to push through, but finding the goal that will actually pull you forward.
Yeah, look, I think most people will have goals. And looking at the past living, present living, and future living. Now, most of my meditational coaching, people in the sort of personal development world, and a lot of studies that say, living in the present is the way we must be, and that brings greatest happiness. And I agree with that. But I think without the future, if you're just living in the present, then what's there to live for? Let's just drink things that's bad for us, smoke things that's bad for us, and eat things that's bad for us, all the rest of it. We may as well, because it doesn't matter. So I think that future side is quite important. Where I'd say, and again, I think most things come back from a childhood and teens. Perhaps it was my degree of comfort of having these future goals. So when I'm struggling as a teenager, Polar Explorer on my wall, that was escape. That's escape from the struggling world we lived in, and that was my goals in there. But I think most people, we all got these goals, but a lot of them are in the clouds, most people. And what I did, and they're dreams. And I dream of a new house, and I dream of traveling around the world. I dream of this sort of luxury yacht sailing the Red Sea, whatever it is, or things. What I think I did was pick them out of the clouds and make them concrete goals. And I wrote them down. I wrote them down as a 12-year-old boy. I wrote down these goals, and they all came true. So there's a power to write these things down. I think most people are perhaps, it's safer to leave them in the clouds. It's a little comfort factor. Oh, if I won the lottery, I'd do this and all the rest of it. Well, if you really do want something determined about it, for instance, let's call the nice big house. And I don't necessarily think a big house makes you any happier. It's materialism, it's consumerism, it's a big house. I've lived in some very big houses, and it really didn't, it was actually a little bit unfriendly. But if a house is your dream, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, if you're determined enough to get to it, then you will put your mind to that. Other things will be sacrifice, social life, fitness life, and everything. You will work to get it. So again, it goes back to getting that dream, picking it out, making a concrete goal, and putting all your efforts into being it. They've said if we all want to be millionaires, we probably could if we're determined enough. But again, I think most people just prefer to leave it in the clouds. It's a safe place. It's nice and comfortable. But actually taking it and doing it is quite frightening for a lot of people.
But we also have to be very careful about the kind of goals that we're setting for ourselves. I love that you brought up winning the lottery, because a lot of people have a dream of winning a lottery. It's completely out of our control whether that happens or not. Yeah. And I feel every year people set New Year's resolutions, and I have observed the amount of people who make a resolution that actually engages the hope or the luck or the synchronicity of the world around them to make that happen, rather than saying, right, this year I'm going to get that particular job, or this year I'm going to win the lottery. Surely it's important for us to set goals where it's all about us and our tenacity and our skills and our willfulness.
Yes and no. I would say, I set goals for my daughter as well, who's a most important part of my life right now. But let me go back to New Year's resolutions. Complete waste of time. Absolute waste of time. New Year's Day, we all get carried away with the euphoria of New Year's Eve. Let's do our New Year's resolutions. If you knew the procedures I go into goal setting, it's a process. And I can tell your listeners, they might find it fascinating. So I started when I was 12 years of age, write them down. I didn't write them every year in the early stages, but I have since I was probably early 20s, wrote them every year. But I've refined it. But I have a a review of my year between about the 10th and the 20th of December. And the whole world, the energy of that time of the year, it's Time Person of the Year, it's Sports Personality of the Year, it's all this reviewing energy. And I have my own review, so I sit back, what was the essence of this year? And I'll do it in a couple of months' time. 2019, what was this year about? What did it end up there? And I'll go back, what I did good, my rewards, my things I did well, what things I didn't do, my learnings. I have those things. I have a session with some fellow coaches. We'll have a pod call. We'll go through it. We'll brainstorm. We'll get that out of the way. And then between 27th of December and the 31st December, so before the New Year's resolutions, all that rubbish, I go again about the goal setting and I set a theme for the year. This is the year of this. And it's like planting a stake in the ground. And that is, this year is about this. And if I wander off this thing, I'm sort of like a tether and it pulls me back. This year's about this. And that's a stake. I break it down into personal goals, professional goals, being goals. The professional and personal ones are broken down by quarters. I use the sun, the Earth's orbit around the sun, the energy systems of the equinox, the solstice. There's a little bit of a, end of June, a little bit of relief, right? Summer's here, well, how are we doing at this 6 months? So it's a real process. And again, review it with some fellow coaches and get this thing. So by the 31st December, my whole year's plan is written down. It's there. And the other thing, and I've often used this sometimes where it said, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I haven't a clue. Okay. Well, I know roughly I'm going, but I don't think, particularly today's world, we can really plan that far ahead. It's so uncertain, the world today, and there's an uncertainty. We just don't quite know. But I think a year, 18 months, we can. And that's a manageable chunk. Again, it's using the Earth's orbit around the sun, the energy systems, the energy of December, the energy of the new year, the energy of September. September's always got a big buzz, the last quarter of the year. And it's using that nature to its fullest of tapping into that and getting your sort of life on a future footing, but not so far in the future that it's sort of out of our hands.
You have proven to yourself that you can persevere, that you can attain the goals that you set for yourself. Not many people have that kind of certainty in themselves. And I do wonder if many people actually shy away from setting audacious goals because they are afraid that they don't have the tenacity to see them through. Do you feel that could be a problem for many people?
Yeah, I suppose it could be because, again, maybe I've just become, perhaps as part of who I am and the values I hold, and having set these big goals in my teens and wrote them down and sort of achieved these things. But the perseverance side is, I don't know. I mean, maybe the military did sort of help as well. I mean, military training, you're taught perseverance. It becomes an ingrained. I mean, I went to Sandhurst, did 2 years of special forces. At Sandhurst, our brain was taken out and implanted with all that things and put back into ourselves. And so perhaps there's a bit of things on that side as well. Look, I'll take the question though with a bigger picture of who we all are. If all of us is capable of changing ourselves, all of us are capable of being better persons, learning. I mean, I got this mantra, life is for learning. Depends how badly you want it. Mm-hmm. So if perseverance is a bit weak to you, how badly is that to you to being a happy person? At the end of the day, we're all after being happy, fulfilled, life worth living, all these things. How important is it to you? Weight loss is a big thing. I talk about, drink and smoking. How many people have struggled to quit smoking? How many people struggle to stop drinking? I drink a little bit, not much, but I can hold a glass of wine or two a week. That's it. I don't need it anymore. I've never smoked. But that's part of who I am, because I got this view, my body is the most precious thing I'll ever be given. I only got one liver, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, and everything else. Yeah. So look after them, because whatever you believe in, this is the only, unless you believe in reincarnation, this is the only body I'll ever have. So I treat this like gold dust. Not everyone sees it like that, but I think it helps for you to experience things in life. I trained as a paramedic, and I worked in hospitals. I did post-mortems. I worked in the ambulance service. I cut up post-mortems lungs of a smoker, and I saw for myself, my eyes, the tar-stained lungs of a smoker. If I wasn't put off smoking by then that sort of made me aware. So that's about education, about experiencing yourself and exposing yourself to to the realities of life, and that perhaps give us that drive.
Is there a benefit in pursuing a smaller goal that you feel that you can get to the end of?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, it's if you set a goal that's too lofty, that's too out of reach, the temptation to give up is overwhelming, and for right reasons too, because you've got to set those smaller interim goals. Forget I'm going to lose 20 kilograms this year, what's something per month or something per quarter. So yeah, very, very much. I think smaller goals over a manageable period of time is a much more healthy way. And when you see the rewards coming in and you tick off a little goal, you give yourself a pat on the back. I've done this thing, and it gives you that momentum and sort of motivation to sort of to keep going. I always thought, job searching was one of the things which I'm sure everyone listening has done it at some stage. When you get into action, when you actually get into action in a program, you start writing, you start calling, and you get some leads. I always actually said, if you're looking for a job, the best thing to do is to not ask for a job, ask for help. And I get hundreds of CVs. People come and send me every week. I get hundreds. If someone's personally asked me, Adrian, do you mind if I ask your advice, to help on something? We're all human beings. Oh, this person's asked the right. I will always answer him and help her and help them out. But I can't answer all these other things. So small little goals, but getting into action just breeds this sort of little motivation. And it's one little lead, one little, I'm willing to see you. It's a small little goal on the way to one particular sort of objective.
So accomplishment probably feeds perseverance in some way then.
Absolutely, yeah. And that goes back to the interim goals, the smaller goals that you can set and tick off.
Now, you have served in the British military, and including in the Special Forces. You've travelled to the most extreme parts of the world. You've written 3 books. Once you have the ability to persevere in pursuing one type of goal, Adrian, like climbing a mountain, does it automatically convert into other areas, such as completing a book? In other words, are you great at persevering at everything, or are there some things that you still struggle through?
I think the trait does branch across different areas of one's life. I would say one thing I didn't say before, which was compartmentalization. I'm very good at that. I say I'm good at it. Let me just rephrase that. I do it, which again comes back to the blinkers on what I said earlier. It can be a little bit all-consuming, self-consuming, but I think the bigger the goal, the more you need to do that, because it's just not the time or anything. If you dilute it too much, you will end up sort of just not achieving anything. I think it does. Again, I think if it's important enough to you, it does carry across all areas of one's life. And I'll give you, one example. I mean, the hardest challenge. I mean, I know we've spoken a lot about physical goals in this interview, and perhaps some people listening, but he's just physically, fit, and he loves physical challenges. Well, let me just put something else on it. A personal challenge, which was a 5-year battle through, I'll just say family courts, a 5-year battle through a family court with constant setbacks. I mean, and I just persevered, and frankly, it's the hardest challenge I've ever had in my life. It beats K2, North Pole, and Everest put together. The hardest challenge I've ever had in my whole life. But I just persevered because I believed what I was doing was right, and you just put up with these setbacks, which had me in tears. I was, just wept on many stages because of the setbacks. But you just pick yourself up and just keep going for it.
That strikes me as the kind of endurance that most of my listeners will feel familiar with, right? Not everyone has climbed a mountain or gone to the poles, but we've all had to get up day after day to deal with something that is deeply emotional and incredibly challenging emotionally. What was it that you were plugging into every morning on the times that you wept? What was it that you were plugging back into that got you up and kept you going?
Well, I think I said earlier again that in the setbacks, looking at the reason for it, in that moments of despair. In fact, I'd say one more. It just looking for reason behind it, but also there's a quote I love that it's from our greatest despairs comes our greatest learnings. It's hard to look at the time, but But when you speak to people who've had terminal illnesses, people who've had terrible accidents and things of tragedies have happened, some people will end up in depression. Some people will end up resorting to drink or to drugs or whatever it is. But if you can realize, and sometimes it takes years later, that there is learning in the darkness, and that perhaps keeps one going. It kept me going, that there's learning behind it, and I think there was in this particular case.
What's really vital there, though, that you've just spoken about, though, is the act of persevering is kind of underpinned by the sense that at some time in the future this may make sense to me, or in some time in the future I will see how I have benefited. Do you feel that, you say living in the moment, being present is incredibly good for us, but having perhaps a faith or knowing or just a hope that there's something in the future, do you feel that's really vital as well?
Yeah, and I don't speak about the deeper stuff too much. I think it's everyone's own personal, whatever they believe in or not believe in, and that's up to them. It doesn't really matter to anyone else what that is. In my personal view, it may upset a few people, but I think we all live, apart from striving for happiness, which most of us are, we do have that hope, and hope is a powerful sort of weapon to use in the darkest times. But sometimes, as I said, I've spoken about blinkers on, I've spoken about compartmentalization, I've spoken about that determination, that perseverance. Sometimes there's a detriment to that, and it's when you put the blinkers on and you compartmentalize so much that you fail to see the bigger picture. And I think that's where sometimes it can become unhealthy.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when people stick to a personal pursuit, whether it be mountain climbing or perhaps a job or a relationship, well beyond the point where it's actually healthy for them. How do we know when we are walking away for our own benefit as opposed to giving up?
Yeah, and I suppose the relationship's perhaps the best one, and I've got a very simple thing: not all relationships are meant to last. I mean, ideally they'll last, but you think about our lives, we have business colleagues, we have school friends, we have friends, we have partners. Most of the partners, obviously, some people lucky enough to have one for life, but in general, people come and go through our lives, so not all relationships are meant to last. So that's one. But I think it goes back to, we perhaps get tunnel vision, and maybe that's where I contrast the blinkers on, which I think is a very good trait. Blinkers on, shutting all else out to go for this goal, whatever we've put on ourselves. Compartmentalization, I think, is a very positive trait. I don't believe in multitasking. I think, people say men can't multitask. Well, there's scientific studies about that. You are taken away from these things. I think compartmentalization in general is a positive thing. But tunnel vision, for some reason, that word tends to me to bring up a little bit negative. It means you cannot see outside the tunnel. Okay. So the blinkers, you can always take the blinkers off and have a little look outside and see what's going on. The compartmentalization, you can always tap into the other areas of your brain, but the tunnel vision, you're stuck in this tunnel and you cannot see the wood for the trees. And I think that's where people get it wrong. And the simple case on K2, which was, the world's most second highest mountain, it's the subject of my new book, One Man's Climb, which I was asked to write it by the daughter of the guy who got killed. Okay. And I think he became tunnel visioned about reaching that summit at all costs, and he and his son, an experienced mountain guides, by the way, we're not talking tourists, a highly well-known mountain guide and his highly experienced son, I think the mountain guide became tunnel visioned on it and just couldn't see outside that obsession. And this is where I suppose obsession becomes again another negative trait. So compartmentalization, determination, perseverance, great, but tunnel vision, no.
How do we know the difference? How do we know when our blinkers have led us into a tunnel?
It's a great question, because I don't think we do know. We can't see it. But I think that then comes to actually asking other people.
Okay.
And getting other people's views, and people whose motivations are for the good of yourself, not for their own self-purposes. And, having that deep chat with people. What do you think about this? Sometimes our partners perhaps are too close to us to give an objective viewpoint. But if you've got a trusted colleague, and trust is one of a huge thing that, it's a fantastic trait that you have with people, but asking them their opinions.
How about feedback from our own bodies, or our own emotional bodies? I know that we often get feedback in our emotional bodies when we are in situations where we're better off walking away. Do you feel that we should pay attention to that kind of feedback? And does it help us understand when it's time to actually step out of the tunnel?
I think our bodies are remarkable things, and the bodies will adapt. I mean, I take the equation, you go into space, basically the body is just, your legs dissolve. You don't need legs in space. So they end up like Mr. Blobby. Go to altitude, blood is sent to the cores. Fingers aren't important, but the body thinks one step ahead. It doesn't think it might need these fingers for tapping on an iPhone. And the same with coldness, so the body will give you signs. And I know, again, you've got to tap into your body. I mean, it sounds quite so holistic, but you've got to know your body very, very well and notice when things aren't quite working. Again, it's this whole awareness and consciousness side of knowing when things don't feel right. Or even take gut instinct. What is gut instinct? Well, it's an energetic thing. Depends what you look at it, but if you really tap into that, what's that sort of saying? It depends how aware you are of your body. So I think that side of thing is perhaps take you out of that tunnel vision side. And I also think when I'm questioning things, I go for a walk in nature, and I look up at the sky, and it's just, it gets us away from the screens, because I've got a massive battle with screen time, the whole way the world is moving to being addicted to our screens. But get into nature and just, it doesn't need to be climbing the top of Everest or anything, but just go for a walk in the woods or on the plains. I live in the New Forest in Hampshire, and it just gives me a different perspective. That's all. Just to, again, I don't know, you just get to think a little bit more out of your own little tunnel vision side of things.
So outside of being an adventurer and a very physical accomplisher, you also partake in a lot of economic, social and environmental sustainability campaigns. Indeed, your advocacy for greater consciousness and mindfulness as well is a huge part of what you do. In these areas, you are actually fighting against some pretty entrenched systems and ideas. How do you persevere in this work? Is it the same kind of perseverance as when you're out climbing a mountain?
Yeah, look, I'm passionate about sustainability, and it's probably the most overused yet misunderstood word in the English language today. I think 75%, 80% of the world's problems are because we don't understand the concept. And very briefly, everything we do in our lives will fall into one of three pillars: our economy, our society, or our environment. What people don't get is that whatever you do in one of those three pillars will affect all the others. And you can't solve problems in one without looking at all three together. So imagine these three circles coming together, that interlinking bit in the middle, that's sustainability. So when you understand that, you think, yes, the sort of fingers click and the key drops, that's the reason for this. So you are, climate change, for instance, is very big, very topical these days. Now, the problem, and it's very fashionable for polar explorers to be climate change advocates and all that. I'm not. It's a serious problem. The Earth is warming, but climate change is only one part of that whole environmental circle. There's whole other things in there that you've got to look at the whole things together: resource depletion, deforestation, antibiotic resistance, everything comes together. And also the way we're looking at climate change campaigns, we're looking at one part only of that climate change, which is to reduce carbon emissions. There's a whole host of things in there. But if you put the whole society and economy together, you've got to look at all these things. And the big ones that nobody will touch: economic growth. And it's not about stopping growth, but economic growth is one of the big elephants in the room. And the second one is the numbers on our Earth. And that's what we need to be addressing. But of course, they're so toxic, people don't address them. But when you address that, you can get that sustainability argument.
So you'll meet a lot of people who you start talking like that and they'll roll their eyes, especially those in certain entrenched systems around the world. What makes you persevere through that conversation? Do you think you're chipping away at people's concepts and ideas of the world?
Well, look, I'm passionate about the world we live in, and that came, again, from the childhood dreams. I'm passionate about wildernesses. I'm passionate about these ice caps and mountains and forests and nature itself. And I want to keep them preserved. And as I said, I don't like them being overrun by, we have to. People say about everything, the pollution and deforestation and resource depletion and climate change and carbon emissions. Well, if you've got 7.4 billion people on Earth, and it could, I don't want to be negative, but unless with that numbers, that's the consequence. So I think the world is changing. We're getting, as I said, one good thing about the internet, about, people are becoming more and more aware of things. So I think the truths are ebbing away. But I think, we've lost the thing, economic growth. We've forgotten what the purpose of growth was, and we've become growth for growth's sake.
Right.
And I think Bhutan, one of my favorite countries in the world, we perhaps get a little bit of lessons from there. Gross happiness index, not gross domestic product.
Absolutely. There are wonderful different ways that we can do things. Now, other than the fact that you're a tenacious man and you can overcome enormous obstacles, what else have you learned about yourself as you've persevered through life's challenges?
Well, I think what I've learned about myself is that we're all pretty capable of enormous things. And I put two examples, and I often speak about this. I mean, there's been cases across the world documented where, let's give an example, a small lady whose child is under the wheels of a car and the driver's unconscious or something like this, and no one's helping the child scream. And this ladies managed to lift up the cars with their bare hands and all the rest of it, and superhuman feats of strength. Or I take another one where people have been diagnosed 6 months to live. They've been cancer, sadly cancer, out of control. 6 months to live, a year to live. And these people have done the most incredible things in that time that they've had left on Earth. And I suppose the coaching world works by, well, if we got all this potential, do we need a crisis to unlock it? All the tools, the techniques, the models, the mantras, the lessons, the learnings, all this stuff to unlock it. And I think that's what I did when I got in the whole world of development from the late 90s. It's just, we got this potential, let's unlock it. And again, depends how much badly you want it.
So my final question, Adrian, I'm incredibly grateful for your time so far. This is a question I ask all my guests on the Eudaemonia podcast. Can you recommend a morning reminder? So this might be a daily ritual, a practice, perhaps even an affirmation that can inspire my listeners to persevere through life's inevitable challenges.
Yes, it is. Now, I know a lot of my personal development friends will say they do the meditation, the 20 minutes and 30 minutes. I haven't got time for that. Sorry, folks. But what I do when I get up in the morning, I go outside and I walk for about a couple of minutes, breathe the air in, look up at the sky. Okay, I'm still alive, I'm still healthy, it's all good, and then go back, and then I'll go on my screens. So I think that 2-minute walk in the morning that's a great affirmation.
That's really powerful before you even pick up your phone and have a look on Twitter. Adrian Hayes, if people want to know more about you, they want to perhaps get a hold of your latest book, where can they find you?
They can find my website, adrianhayes.com. That's Adrian, ADRIANHAYES.com. And everything links to social media sites, and the book is all there.
Well, I am incredibly grateful for your time, as I say, and I wish you a very pleasant evening up here on the top of the hill in Singapore.
Thanks very much.
The ancient Greek philosopher Plutarch once said, "Perseverance is more prevailing than violence, and many things which cannot be overcome when they are together yield themselves up when taken little by little." You've been listening to the Eudaemonia podcast. If you'd like to learn more about how to live a truly flourishing life, please subscribe and check out eudaemoniapod.com for more inspiring episodes. I'm Kim Forrester. Until next time, be well. Be kind to yourself, and when life knocks you down, get back up and persevere.